All right, it's 3:01. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sarah, can you do roll call?
President Bucher,
Here.
Trustee Barheit,
Here.
Trustee Brooks,
Here.
Trustee Polly,
Here.
Trustee Faber,
Here.
Trustee Gant,
Here.
and Trustee Hopkins is absent. Thank you.
Did we meet open meeting compliance?
Yes, the agenda was posted yesterday, April 22nd, online in Ant Village Hall.
Perfect. We will go into public comments. Please address the board. There will be no back and forth discussions, and there's a 3-minute limit. Harry Laws, come forward, state your name and address for the record, and please speak into the microphone if you would. Thank you.
Thank you. No back and forth, damn it. Excuse me. Hi, my name is Dr. Harry Laws. I live at 306 North Cogswell Drive on the lake at Lake Silver Lake. I'm also the treasurer of the Silver Lake Management District. And we are working hand in hand with the DNR to make sure that our lake remains pristine and safe. As a matter of fact, we have contracted with the local sheriff's department to conduct rounds on during the summer to make sure that those people that use our lake use it safely. And if they are not, are duly ticketed. So we are here basically to listen today to hear the pros and cons of this surfing and whatever regulations will be adopted by the group here. We will make sure that they're enforced going forward. We do understand that there are some cons associated with surfing on our lakes, to include damage to the shoreline, damage to the bottom of the lake, as well as potential safety issues with boaters and skiers. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Thank you. Okay, I do have a comment to read in from Lorraine and Tim Bernier. Proposals by the Last Wilderness Alliance to impose restrictions on wake surfing across the state have raised serious concerns among lake enthusiasts. While the proposed restrictions on wake surfing represent a portion of the population, they do not address the genuine concerns and interests of many Wisconsin residents who are deeply invested both emotionally and financially in preserving the freedoms they enjoy on Wisconsin lakes. Imposing blanket restrictions would severely limit recreational opportunities for boat owners across the state. Individual lake associations are already equipped to manage lake usage in a manner that best serves the interests of riparian homeowners. External interference from groups like the Last Wilderness Alliance only serves to undermine local autonomy and impose their narrow agenda on lake communities. The DNR encourages towns to use existing state laws. The DNR's letter dated 1/29/25 from Rick Warren, Recreation Warden, Southwest Region, Division of Public Safety and Resource Protection, DNR, to Palmyra Township states existing state of Wisconsin laws already cover hazardous wake and shoreline distance, and further interjects that objectionable wakes are not all from wake surfing or wakeboard boats. The notice of this meeting was in itself planned without enough notice for the people that it may affect to attend and represent themselves. As all lakes are not the same, the Village of Salem Lake should take into account the many voices of the riparian owners. I would hope that the Village of Salem Lakes would take this into consideration. Thank you. We'll go into the agenda. Discussion on the following items. 6.1 wake surfing presentation by John Richter from the Last Wilderness Alliance.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Sorry, Dennis is gonna say a few things first.
Okay.
Said to introduce John as you did, and he comes from Sainer, Wisconsin, 400 miles away this morning to get here to do this. And I wanted to mention a few things about our lakes. And really how excited I am about this meeting. You see behind me, the village of Salem Lakes, and this is the first meeting I can recall that we've really had about our lakes. There's 9 lakes that are make up what we call the village of Salem Lakes, 7 of which would be these types of boats could be used on these lakes. Some are, some aren't, but we have, I'll start in alphabetical order. Volts Lake, no, I'm sorry. I'm a little old, I got that wrong, okay. But Volts Lake is 52 acres, has an average depth of 7 foot, and it's 24 feet at its deepest part. Lake Shangri-La is 76 acres, 5 foot average depth, 24 foot is the maximum depth. But it's combined with Bennett Lake, so that leaves 154 acres total. But again, it's only a 5 foot average depth. Hooker Lake is 87 acres, 12 foot depth. Average 27 foot is the deepest, but there's 15 acres that is in Cannock Lake. So it makes it 102 acres total. Cross Lake is 87 acres, 12 foot's the average depth, 35 foot's the deepest part, but part of that is in Illinois. Silver Lake is 528 acres from an October study that was done in 2017. Prior to that, it was 464 acres. But it's 528 acres, average depth is 10 foot, deepest spot is 44 foot. 21% of it is in 15 foot of water or more, that's 79 acres. Center Lake is 120 acres, 10 foot average depth, 28 foot is at the deepest. And Camp Lake is 523 acres from that October 17th work that was done by the Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. It has a 5 foot average depth. Deepest spot is 19 foot. And 53% of it is in 3 foot of water or less. The other 2 lakes are Montgomery Lake with 46 acres and 23 foot depth, but it's only 46 acres, so there's no wakes allowed on that lake. The last one is Rock Lake. It's 46 acres, 20 foot is the average depth. Goes up to 33 feet, and there's no gas engines allowed on that lake. And I'll just put there, I do have more information about the districts and what have you, but we'll get going with John and his presentation.
Ready, set?
Ready, set.
Okay. Wake surfing has become the most important issue to impact our lakes in a decade, maybe more.
Oh, John, can you talk into the, thank you.
Yeah, I'll-
That'll help.
Get a little closer. Running out of voice these days, I'm sorry. In areas where the impacts are of great concern, local municipalities have begun enacting local ordinances to protect their lakes and other lake users. What follows is an update on the status of this activity in our state. Coalition's been formed to pursue a state ordinance, but the possibility that this will be taken up this year or next is very slim. 2025 is the budget year, and on top of that, the legislature will be impacted by the recent election of a number of new legislators who are probably still looking for the bathrooms in the Capitol. And some of the experienced legislators have left the state. It's estimated we won't see state legislation in place until perhaps as late as 2028, and there's a possibility that it won't happen at all. 2028 is too late for reasons you'll see today. The coalition is growing steadily as other groups join in. The leaders of the coalition are 5 groups: Wisconsin Wildlife Federation, Last Wilderness Alliance, Wisconsin Lakes, Wisconsin's Green Fire, and Lakes at Stake. Some of the sporting groups that have joined and are passionate about this include Walleyes for Tomorrow and Trout Unlimited, first chapter of Muskies Inc., and a bunch of other chapters. Yahara Fishing Club. County groups include Vilas and Oneida County Lake and River Associations and the Sawyer County Lakes Forum. Every week brings new members. The Milwaukee Journal says now that our 76 plus conservation and sporting groups are the largest coalition of organizations to ever work together on legislation in state history. The underlying science for this presentation comes from both the Carroll University sewer pack 3-year study of North Lake and Waukesha County, and from the 3-year study by St. Anthony Falls Lab at the University of Minnesota. We've also reviewed studies from British Columbia on Lake Windermere, from Connecticut on Lake Warramug, and from Lake Powell and Lake Mead done by the state of Nevada and the University of California, Davis. The North Lake study is available on YouTube, as are a couple of the SAFL study reports. The final report of SAFL has been in peer review for nearly a year now and is expected this summer. It focuses additional attention on the impact of prop wash and of transverse waves, as well as the primary divergent waves on the lake floor. Let's talk about what wake surfing really is and what these boats are. They surf like you do in the ocean without a tow rope 5 to 15 feet behind the boat. They maintain transition speed of somewhere between 10 and 12 miles an hour. That's bow up and stern down severely. It's plowing the boat through the water. It's not on plane. Propellers angle downward over 30 degrees below horizontal. It causes excessive propeller wash to more than 20 feet below the surface, and some of the new studies are showing it down to as much as 33 feet. It creates large waves to 4.5 feet that damage the environment and property and create a safety hazard. The angle of the prop wash, well, the surf boats weigh 4,000 to 6,000 pounds, and the bigger one, they're getting bigger every year, as you can imagine. They can load 5,000 pounds of ballast water. It's like parking a Suburban on the back end of the boat. The angle of the hull at operation is 15 to 18 degrees down. Most props are straight out. The shaft is 15 degrees, totaling over 30 degrees. These things draw 36 inches standing still, so the prop is 48 inches below the water without moving. That's what it looks like. The 3 types of boats: wake surfing at 10 miles an hour, wakeboarding at 18, and water skiing somewhere around 32. What's happening underwater is a two-way punch, is a 1-2 punch. The damage is caused by 2 very different waves. First, a prop wash directly under the boat's path scours the lake bed down to 30 feet. Second, the waves have underwater energy. Energy is neither created nor destroyed until it hits something, so the lake bed is disturbed as wakes move towards shore and they reach water about 8 feet deep. At that point, it starts roiling the water and it picks up sediment. The sediment is disturbed, the plants are damaged and uprooted, fish and wildlife habitat is destroyed. Phosphorus, mercury, and other pollutants are freed that have been locked up in the bottom sediments. That photo right there shows just what 20 seconds of surfing does. And you can see, I don't know if my cursor shows here, but you can see the center prop wash plume, but you can see that it spreads out in a fairly broad manner across the stern of the boat. That wash resuspends all of the bottom sediments that are above the hard pack. Here's another view of that. There's no minimum depth requirement for surfing in Wisconsin, and actually there aren't any requirements for anything in Wisconsin about surfing. Studies show a depth of at least 20 feet is needed to avoid prop wash damage from wake surfing, and as I said, some suggest 33 feet. A new study in Connecticut shows a lake bed severely damaged at 26 feet. There are some tests being run on the lake in southern Wisconsin, not too terribly far from here, that are going to happen this spring. And we're going to have divers down. This is being done by a lake district. There will be divers and submersible drones on the bottom to film the depth that these things go and produce that bottom damage. The St. Anthony Falls Lab is really the significant premier study. It's 150 pages, and the math models will cross your eyes. I could not make head nor tail of them, but what they come up with is the 3 ways that the power produced by these boats does damage. The wave height in the wake surf mode is 2 to 3 times greater than ski boat waves. The wave energy is 3 to 9 times greater than a ski boat wave. And wave power, which is kind of the big kahuna, is that of a ski boat generated waves. The reference point is 200 feet from shore. comparing that to a ski boat wave produced at 200 feet from shore. In the spirit of picture being 1,000 words, I'm going to show you 1,000 pictures right now. I'll get it.
For the past decade, wake sports have been increasing on inland lakes and rivers. To create a wave big enough to serve 8,000 to 10,000 pound boats loaded with lake water ballast use a large, powerful engine to push the boat's stern down, creating a wave. While there is no doubt that the powerful waves pose safety risks to other lake users, a new, troublesome impact is coming to light. Ecological damage to the bottom of lakes, potentially impacting water quality and fisheries for years to come. Big Cedar Lake in Washington County, Wisconsin, is a natural spring-fed lake with many glacial features. It's also where a local resident started to notice and document serious changes in the lake bottom in recent years. What you'll see in this video is the unseen damage we believe is being caused by wake surfing. The main way for waves are divergent waves, meaning they move away from the boat. For wake surfing, these waves are bigger, travel farther, and can damage shorelines, docks, and piers, and pose danger to other lake users. What is harder to see is the downward prop wash, which extends 20 feet or more below the surface, destroying fish habitat and nests, while at the same time stirring up long, dormant sediment containing phosphorus and, in some cases, heavy metals and harmful chemicals. Watch the wake boat as it moves through deeper water up onto a 6-foot deep bottom plateau. The downward prop wash is so strong that it creates a tornadic effect on the bottom, lasting minutes after the boat passes over the area. The bubbling sediment continues to churn. While wake surfers insist that they only operate their boats in deep water, unfortunately, many times they are operating in shallower spots of a lake or ride over shallower underwater reefs or structures. So how is this impacting the underwater ecosystem? This is a thriving deep weed bed on Big Cedar Lake from the summer of 2014. The chain of life is evident as fish, large and small, thrive in the aquatic vegetation. These deep weed beds hold the key to the aquatic ecosystem. It's where middle schools hide in big musky northern pike trout. Sadly, many of these deep weed beds on Big Cedar Lake are now gone. This is the same area from the summer of 2023, now a barren landscape. The question is what will happen to our fisheries in the years ahead as vital habitat is lost? Wake surfers insist they are not the cause, and maybe other factors perhaps contributed to the loss of this habitat. But while fishing and ski boats were used extensively on Big Cedar Lake for decades before 2014, the one thing that has changed has been the start of wake surfing. While other boats certainly do impact the environment, let's compare what happens to the same exact bottom area of Big Cedar Lake when a wake surfer passes over it versus a typical water ski boat. We can see how the downward prop wash is destroying the bottom, where it appears all the sediment was completely blasted off, stripping the bottom down to mud. Can any vegetation or fish nests survive even one or two inadvertent passes like this? An education program for wake boat operators won't solve the problem. A few passes from one or two wake surf boats has already done the damage. This is a typical, not a wake surf boat. This same bottom stretch of lake is not impacted by traditional activities such as water skiing, tubing, jet skiing, or cruising. It takes a highly sophisticated and expensive piece of machinery to create a wake large enough to surf. And the wake surfing boats are getting bigger and more powerful with each passing year.
With world-class weights and waves, the G25 Paragon continues to be the pinnacle of perfection. Let's go check out what it has to offer for 2023. The G25 Paragon comes in at 25 feet in length, is 102 inches wide, weighs 7,400 pounds, has seating for up to 19 people, has an integrated sub-4 factory ballast of 2,200 pounds, has an additional supplemental ballast option of 1,450 pounds for a grand total of 3,650 pounds of factory ballast. So you get amazing wakes and waves all over.
Wake surfing boats also carry a hidden threat: transfer of invasive species in their ballast. The ballast systems can hold hundreds of gallons of lake water. These systems are nearly impossible to inspect. They do not drain or dry completely, and they are extremely difficult to clean and decontaminate. This creates the perfect environment for the transfer of aquatic invasive species from lake to lake. As wake surfing proliferates on Wisconsin lakes, its negative impacts are now starting to take a toll on one of our most significant natural resources. We urge citizens and elected officials to take action now. One step would be to protect our lakes from aquatic invasive species and damaging lakes by placing restriction that prohibits watercraft from artificially enhancing a wake through the use of ballast systems, design features, operational procedures, or any other means on all Wisconsin lakes. The Wisconsin DNR is encouraging local municipalities and lake districts to address this issue as they see best fit for their local needs. As a result, a number of local governmental units around the state have now enacted ordinances that prohibit wake-enhanced sports. The local governmental unit that regulates your lakes has this power. Please join us in this effort to protect our inland lakes and rivers in Wisconsin and beyond.
This boat was taking a slow cruise on the Wapaka chain of lakes last summer. A passing wake boat divergent wave lifted this boat and dropped it quite hard, apparently into a trough. 5 people ended up on the floor of the boat, and one was seriously injured and spent 3 weeks in the hospital in medical care for her back. The boat owner was coincidentally a friend of Richard Phillips, one of my partners on the board of Last Wilderness. Richard gave a presentation to the Farmington Town Board on ordinance creation shortly after that. All boaters are at risk from these large waves, including capsizing, small boats, canoes, kayaks, and SUPs, which is happening across the north. Skiers are also at risk, and it's interesting that on my board, 20% of them have been injured by a wake boat wave contact, including 4 broken ribs for one of my lady board members, and a summer lost to a shoulder injury for another one of my board members, caused by a steep wave from a surf boat. Both were water skiing. Both of these were caused by waves from a surf boat. It does make us all wonder how many of these injuries happen that are not reported. Neither of ours were reported. By the time these accidents happen, that boat is 1,000 feet away or more, and you don't really know where that wave came from. I was on a little cocktail cruise one night, my pontoon boat, and did not see the wave coming from the left. I was facing right, and it tossed me into an hors d'oeuvre tray, and a couple of my people ended up on the floor too. It is something that goes on all the time. You can see that this boat was damaged by the impact. One of the biggest safety issues is the obstructed view looking forward for the driver of the boat. In surf mode, the bow can be so high that the driver can't see ahead. This is a boat industry ad photo. If you look at this closely, and here's a little bigger view of that, where's everybody facing, including the driver of the boat? If you draw a line across his sunglasses, you can see that there's a good portion of what's in front of him that he can't see. The field of view includes only the bow of the boat for the first 45 degrees forward-facing view. Incidents resulting from this has happened, as I say, across the north. Waves produced by the activity are divergent waves. The hydraulics are very steep in this wave, and they lose almost no energy until they hit something. On our lakes, the first thing they hit is the lake bottom as it approaches shore. It roils the bottom sediments from that point all the way to the shore. Energy that is not lost to friction with the lake bed builds into a crested wave. You see that on the ocean. If you walk down the beach on the Atlantic Ocean, sometimes you'll see big round waves coming in. And as the water gets shallower, that wave builds and it crests. And that's the principle involved in these waves too. All of our bass and panfish nest near shore, just a few feet deep. The eggs are suffocated by silt. If they get in during the spawning season, if one of these boats come past, it's gonna suffocate the eggs in a nest. Powerful waves also destroy plants. Small fish live among the plants. Fewer plants mean fewer small fish for large fish to eat. This is all pretty basic. Plants help stabilize the lake bed and they store and cycle nutrients. This is a graph or a chart from Mid-Lake in part of the Minocqua chain. This is their weed harvest log. Mid-Lake has a lot of curly-leaf pondweed. If you go to the 2012 entry, they harvested 300 loads that year. And you can see what happened since. The good news is that the curly leaf is decreased, but the bad news is that the harvest total has gone down to almost nothing. Today, Mid-Lake is almost bereft of weeds, and the water clarity has declined, and the fishing has declined too. There is now a one lake ordinance on Mid-Lake done by the city of Minocqua. This photo is part of the submersible drone video that shows previous aquatic weed habitat that had been altered by silt plumes produced by wake surfing. The stubs that you see are the plants that were smothered by the accumulation of silt. You can see this video, and it goes on for quite a while, on a YouTube presentation of the North Lake study from Waukesha County, along with a number of other drone videos that they produced during that study. The depth here, I believe, if I remember right, it was 13.5 feet, and the drone descended to greater depths showing smothered plants. North Lake had tremendous water quality. Their Secchi disc readings were north of 20 feet until wake boats showed up. A quick summary of the impact of these boats and the wake surfing activity on our lake's ecosystem. The phrase user conflicts in the first one understates the issue. It really includes injuries as well and capsized boats. On Plum, we've documented people tossed around in their pontoon boat. We have an antique wood Chris Craft that was owned by one of our 5-generation families. The boat was tied in the boathouse for all those generations, an old boat. Wake boat went by, that big wave crested and went over the stern of the boat and sunk it. The family was gone. They found it a week later. Managed to get it out of the water, and they checked it to make sure that it didn't have leaks, and it did not. The shoreline erosion, the prop wash impact, lake sediments and chemicals resuspended in the water, sediment deposits on plants, and sealed ballast tanks, and we'll talk more about that, transporting invasive animals like spiny water flea and zebra mussels. UW studied the volume and content of residual water and recreational watercraft ballast systems, and they did it in 13 boats. The average was 8 gallons that could not be purged out of those boats, and 2 boats retained over 20 gallons. 9 of the 13 sampled boats contained live invertebrates, including zebra mussel villagers, after more than a week. They were unable to collect residual water in 5 of the boats because they had permanent ballast compartments that can't be penetrated. The ballast systems are often located in storage compartments, and they're difficult, if not impossible, for a boater to drain completely. In fact, the manufacturers say you shouldn't drain them completely because it'll ruin the pumps. Spiny water flea has a dormant resting egg that lasts for years. It can be eaten by a fish and pooped out, and it's still a viable egg. They're very tough, and they are in residual ballast. University of Minnesota did the same thing. They tested 8 boats. They put them in Lake Minnetonka. They filled it up with water. They purged the water. They took the boats out and they checked the residual water for what was in it. 7 of the 10 boats contained live zebra mussel veligers. They also tested the residual water in stern drives because there's a lot of conversation about how much water a stern drive holds. It's a couple of quarts. Veligers found in the stern drive motors in the Dow study were all dead. That water is used for cooling, and the heat of the one thing these zebra mussel veligers can't stand, and spiny water flea as well, is hot water. So the temperature of the water killed all of the invasives. This map is UW Limnology's AIS prevention tool. It's a shiny app. It shows the potential of lake suitability for various invasive species. This is the one for zebra mussel, and you probably can't see the graph or the chart up in the top right. The orange color says it's suitable. Yellow color is borderline. Blue is non-suitable, and gray is no data. All of the lakes in the town are susceptible to zebra mussels. This is the map for spiny water flea. Spiny water flea requires deep water and cool water. They live down near the thermocline in darker water, and they rise at night to feed. So the shallow lakes are not going to have a problem with the spiny water flea, but the larger lakes are susceptible. The vector for the spread of all of these species and virtually all of the other 186 species in Lake Michigan is the transfer of infested water. While boats contain some water, all boats contain some water, it's easily drained from bilges and bait wells, and it's the law to do that. Inboard and outboard motor cooling water is decontaminated by the heat from the engines. The 3 to 5 ballast tanks and wake serve water hold 400 to 650 gallons of water. The tanks can't be completely purged. Studies by UW and UWM have shown that 8 to 20 gallons retained, and it's mixed with the next lake's water and then purged before taking out, passing whatever organisms, including veligers, mussel larvae, into the new lake in violation of Wisconsin law. Wakeboat manufacturers have designed these boats without consideration of this law or concern for their ability to contaminate lakes. That law is printed in the boating pamphlet that every boater gets when registering his boat. These guys have lawyers. Lawyers can read. There is no excuse for violating NR 19.055, which was developed when they discovered VHS, viral hemorrhagic septicemia, a fish disease, a virus in Lake Winnebago. And they put an emergency order on at that time, and that emergency order continues today. It's now law. You can't transfer water from one lake to another. A quick outline of the impact of invasives. They compete with spiny water flea competes with juvenile fish, since Daphnia, our native zooplankton, are their primary food source. Spiny reduces Daphnia phytoplankton and increases and water clarity decreases. Tall spines make it really hard for the small fish to eat spiny water flea. They're kind of a dead end in the food web, and they'll eventually lead to fewer big game fish. There is no way to eliminate spiny. And there are 20 lakes, if I can make this work, that have spiny in Vilas County alone, in a center part of Vilas County. Trout Star, My Plum Lake, Ike Walton, Stormy Lake in the Guile Flowage, and Butternut Lake in Forest County all have spiny water flea. Here's the new threat, and this one's really kind of a game changer. Zebra mussel has adversely impacted many lakes in Wisconsin, but the new threat, quagga mussel, is much more aggressive. Quagga has been found in Geneva Lake, the first inland lake, last summer. It's been found in densities in Lake Michigan up to 33,000 per square meter. That's many feet thick. It has a long siphon, as you can see on the top there, and it filters more than a liter of water every day. Quagga mussels filter the entire volume of Lake Michigan every 10 days. They consume Diphorea in Michigan, which is a cousin to our native Daphnia. and other zooplankton is a major source for young of the year fish. Quagga poop contains more phosphorus and more nitrogen than any other animal. The result in Lake Michigan has been an explosion of Cladophora, a filamentous algae, and there are 183 species of Cladophora. Some of them exist in our inland lakes. We have Cladophora in many of our clearwater lakes in northern Wisconsin. It's a filamentous algae. It's like slime. Here's quagga at the left, zebra at the right. Zebra's been expanding across the state into water that has the necessary chemical composition, and that's primarily calcium, which allows it to form its shell. It's now considered that about 12 micrograms per liter of calcium is sufficient, but lakes close to that are considered potentially susceptible. Plum Lake is in that potentially susceptible category at 11 micrograms per liter. Adverse impacts include the displacement of beneficial aquatic plants, reduction in invertebrate densities and fish spawning, reduction in species, biodiversity, and anoxia from decaying mats of Cladophora, resulting in botulism kills and other aquatic life. Hundreds of thousands of seabirds, including loons and eagles in the Lake Michigan corridor, have been killed by the botulism. It also results in retention of pathogenic microbes such as E. coli and fecal bacteria, potential human health hazards. And you can't forget the negative impacts on recreational use of impacted shorelines, nearshore areas from both the terrible smell of the rotting algae, which smells like sewage, and the sharp edges of dead mussels shells on the beach. Depressed property values of adjacent homes are also in effect. You can find a lot of information in the Great Lakes Environmental Research Laboratory. This is a page from that, and I've expanded one of these things to show this is Lake Michigan quagga mussel density. The year 2000 is at the left, the year 2010 at the right. Quagga mussel totally took over Lake Michigan, kicked zebra out in a period of 10 years. Trillions of quagga mussels are in Lake Michigan. The loss of algae-eating zooplankton results in severe algae blooms, producing cyanobacteria known as blue-green algae. Cyanobacteria is a human health hazard and is fatal for pets. This photo is from Fox Lake in Dodge County. I'm on Fox Lake. I hunt ducks there. I've worked this watershed for 40 years with DNR. The chair of the Lake District recently told me that he has fenced his yard in, including his lake frontage, to keep his dog from drinking the water in the summer. This is a map showing the density of native zooplankton in Lake Michigan, 94 on the left and 2010 on the right. The mussels have nearly erased native zooplankton and phytoplankton from Lake Michigan. Again, this is the primary food source for young of the year fish. And this is likely what caused the collapse of the perch fishery in Lake Michigan. It gets worse. Quagga feces contain more nitrogen than any other animal, as we said, and the result in Lake Michigan has been an explosion of Cladophora due to the water clarity, which has gone from Secchi disc readings that were 20 feet typically, which is a nice clear water, to more than 100 feet today. So Cladophora is growing down as deep as the sunlight penetrates. It is not a pretty picture. This is Cladophora all along Lake Michigan. In the lower left, the shoreline containing zebra and quagga mussel shells. Another relatively new invasive for inland lakes is starry stonewort, first discovered in Little Muskego Lake in 2014, and now in 51 lakes and rivers across Wisconsin. This is a chara. This is a microalga, and it dominates the bottom to the exclusion of all other aquatic plants. It has no food value, and it can be spread by small pieces of chopped up algae or the star-shaped bulbils that give it its name. And VHS was discovered in Winnebago in 2006. We talked about the NR 40 and NR 19.055 that DNR enacted as emergency rules and are now regulations. prohibiting the transfer of water. These are your lakes. Center Lake, Camp Lake, Hooker, Silver, Bolts, Shangri-La, which I could not find any data on. I think because I did not spell it right and I didn't put it all together, but somehow or other, there's nothing in DNR's registry on Shangri-La, Montgomery and Rock. Let's go back to that for a minute because the right-hand side is calcium content. I picked out the calcium content for the lakes that were registered in the data that I had. You'll remember that we were talking about 11 to 12 micrograms per liter being enough for zebra mussel. Quagga mussel, there are studies that are being done on Lake Powell and Lake Mead in the western part of the country. They have a tremendous problem with zebra and quagga out there, and it's coming from the Midwest. They stop people coming into the states now with boats to make sure they're decontaminated. Your lakes all have a great deal of calcium in it, so there is going to be no problem with the establishment of zebra mussels if villagers show up in the ballast of a wake surf boat. There's a map of your lake, Silver, the one that would be most likely to have it. The law that is being bandied about for the state is distance and depth. The red line there is 700 feet from shore. That's what's being recommended by our coalition. The green line is I think I did 25 feet of depth. It's more likely we're going to try for 30. So that yellow area is the area that would be wake surfable. Most of the other lakes are either too shallow or too small to come up with any kind of wake surfing. So I only did this for Silver. There's 3,000 feet of linear distance from the top to the bottom here. That's the longest part of that area. That gives at 10 or 11 miles an hour, at 3,000 feet provides a ride of somewhere around 2.5 minutes. The wake surf industry says that you should be able to support at least a 5-minute ride at a minimum. So it doesn't really work too well for wake surfers. They're off that boat pretty quickly, and they're turning around and going back the other way. That space would accommodate one boat, maybe two. They'll interfere with each other. They don't like to cruise too close together, going back and forth like this. So we kind of asked ourselves not too long ago, where are we going with all of this? To get an idea of what the future looks like, we thought we might get some insight from the lineup of boat models that are offered by the 3 major manufacturers. Mastercraft, Malibu, Ski Nautique, and My Youth. Those were the main boats for skiing. Between them, they're offering 44 different models for the 24 lineup. Only 4 of those are traditional ski boats. The balance of them, 40, are ballasted boats. That's pretty sobering. And it helped us to find the commitment and the resolve of the water sports industry to this new profit center. These boats are very expensive. They're $150,000 minimum. Many of them go to $400,000 or $500,000. That boat that you saw in that ad was somewhere between $350,000 and $400,000. But that's not the smallest boat. Now we're going to get bigger boats. This is Gigawave. It's 35 feet long. It draws 6 feet of water. It has a 10-foot beam. It weighs 8,000 pounds. It's capable of adding 8,000 pounds of water in its ballast. And it's got a 600 horsepower electric motor. It will throw a 6-foot wave. Surf boats are no longer just being built by ski boat manufacturers. This guy comes from Regal, Florida manufacturer who builds high-end boats out to about 52 feet. This is what they call their surf boat, 38 Surf. It's 38 feet long and it has twin 430 horsepower motors. There are 44 townships today that have enacted local ordinances. This is the sign on one of my landings on Plum Lake. The experience of townships so far has been that the ordinance is pretty much self-enforcing. No citations have been issued yet from any of these 44 lakes. The fine for this is driven by state boating laws. $500 for the first offense and $1,000 for every offense after that. The industry likes to disparage the effort by referring to a hodgepodge of ordinances. I guess they've never seen the trout fishing regulations or the walleye limit regulations, which require a Philadelphia lawyer to sort out and a GPS to figure out if you're in the right area. The ordinances are very consistent, and this is the essence of what is being required by these ordinances. They prohibit the equipment that includes ballast tanks, ballast bags, fins to cause a boat to operate in a bow-high manner, which increases or enhances the boat's wake. Prohibited operation, you can't operate the boat in an artificially bow-high manner, having the effect of increasing the boat's wake. Such prohibited operation shall include wake enhancement by ballast tanks, bags, fins, or continuous operation at transition speed, the speed below planing speed in which a boat is operating in plowing mode. We've included exceptions. In no event shall any of the following operations be deemed a violation of the ordinance, provided that such operations don't use or employ ballast tanks or bags or wake enhancing fins. That includes water skiing. It includes tubing, wakeboarding, employing a tow rope, brief transition to operation at transition speed to empty a boat of bilge water, and brief transition operation of a boat accelerating into a planing condition. The town board can enforce these ordinances. Officials are granted the authority to issue citations, and they can delegate the authority to employees of the town. It's in Chapter 66, General Municipality Law. So that's pretty much it. The 44 towns have completed their work on ordinances. They have not had issues. The signs have been posted across Vilas County. We've got about 2/3 of Vilas County under ordinances now. I shouldn't say we, the towns have chosen to do this. Our job at Last Wilderness is to assist them and to assist lake associations, which is how we got into this in the first place, with their town boards. In the north, many town boards are not lake people. They're local people, and they're not necessarily riparians, and they don't necessarily understand this, and they've got much more to do than to do ordinances on stuff they don't understand. So they need to understand what's at stake here. I would take any questions you guys might have. Thank you for your attention.
John, how many attorneys are involved with your organization and have contributed to the writing of the ordinance?
We have, the people in our organization include 4 lawyers and 2 engineers. The piece that you've got, the infographic, was created by Carol Phillips, who's an amazing talent. She's an engineer. Jeff Meisman runs our hazardous waste group. I'm a member of that as well as a board member. And we have 5 of us doing presentations around the state. Right now, I'm working with 8 townships. I think Richard's working with 12. Richard Phillips is a former Exxon senior lawyer. Tom Olson is still working. He should be retired, but he's still working. And he's working at Lawton and Cates in Madison, which is an environmental firm. We have, I think, 12 people on our board right now.
I attended the Lakes Convention in Stevens Point a couple of weeks ago, and I saw their presentation. And the gentleman that was the attorney for Exxon was quite a showman, let me put it that way.
He's very dynamic.
They're very, very happy that the ordinance, the way that it's written, if it's not deviated, it hasn't been challenged. And he's looking for a challenge. That's the kind of guy he was. It was very interesting. But the important thing here is that it doesn't interfere with skiing, pulling a tube, those types of activities, slalom skiing, all that is, it's just simply the taking on of this, filling these ballasts and taking water from one lake to another one. In fact, Camp Lake has recently found that it has that starry starboard. And it was found in Lake Geneva a couple of years ago, and that's the only lake around that had it.
As
Now we have it, and it's right out from the boat landing, the DNR boat landing. So it's quite obvious something brought it in and got it in the lake.
it expanded pretty fast. I mean, it got to 50 lakes in about 2 years. So it's evidently very transportable.
Very possibly. In fact, it was turned down. The DNR didn't like Lake Geneva do what they wanted to do to try and get rid of it. So
All of this stuff is coming in by boat. And I think the difference is the amount of roiling action that these boats create, and they're filling their tanks often in the same places. And in the west, they're worried about transporting it from one part of the lake to the other. That's happening in Lake Mead, and where they've been trying to concentrate it and deal with it in those small places. They're finding that when people fill their ballast tanks in the areas that have zebra mussel villagers, for instance, and then they go they go chasing across the lake. When they take out at the landing, or if they're adding or subtracting ballast to get the boat lightened up, they're transferring the invasives to the other parts of the lake. The ballast thing is the big deal as far as we're concerned, and we don't know how to deal with it. The manufacturers are refusing to deal with it. They won't talk to us. And they're trying to, I think last year they dropped $600,000 in packs in the state of Wisconsin. They're trying to win the day, and we're hoping that they don't.
there is a proposal for ordinance with the legislature. It didn't pass. And the wakeboard boating industry wanted 200 feet from shore, no depth restrictions. And said that that would be okay, but that hasn't gone any place, as you mentioned earlier. 700 foot from shore and then at least 20 some foot of water.
There is a bill that's been drafted. It's been through the Legislative Reference Bureau, and it's on hold. And what we understand about that bill is that there is some kind of an agreement among those in the Republican Party that they need to have 17 senators to before they're going to drop that bill. They have not dropped it. They've been threatening it for about 2 months, and it still isn't here. We're prepared for it. We're going to be lobbying very heavily. All 76 organizations are ready for it. And we expect that, we'll have as strong a voice as they will in this. But again, it hasn't dropped. I don't think they've got the support for it. There are a lot of legislators that in different parts of the state that are not in favor of getting rid of local control. And that's part of the bill. It's not only 200 feet from shore, it's also get rid of all of these ordinances. 200 feet from shore is nothing. And there's no depth requirement.
One of the other things that the boating industry lawyers pushed for was to change our constitution so that municipalities cannot make laws. They'd have to wait for the legislature makes a law, the DNR enforces the laws, the way that works. But the way the Constitution is now, towns, villages, cities that have lakes, we can make our ordinance. And we can always exceed what the state does as well. Currently, they have a 100 foot from shore. They just did that about 7-8 years ago. Prior to that, there was no restriction for making a wake from shore. We've always had a 200 foot. This goes back to the 70s or 80s is when our board at that time established 200 foot from shore. So that's great. I mean, it's great they did that back then. And this ordinance again does not interfere with people that want to slalom ski or water ski or tube. It just simply is taking and putting some restrictions on, you know, ripping up the bottom and shoreline.
Just to finish up one comment that I may have missed in this presentation. There is no way to decontaminate these boats in Wisconsin today. I've been corresponding with a guy from Utah who's developed a dip tank. The dip tank is something that they back the trailer and the boat into. The boat runs, its pumps, completely fills and circulates the water for 10 minutes in the ballast tanks. And that water is 110 degrees. If it's run for 10 minutes at 110 degrees, it kills the mussels, it kills the villagers, and it eliminates spiny water flea. That unit costs $800,000. They have 5 of them around Lake Powell. That's how serious they are about trying to keep that lake solid. That's the future, I think, here. We need to have something that really works. It's going to decontaminate these boats if you're going to have wake surfing in Wisconsin. And if you can't decontaminate that ballast, we have to find a way to stop this until they can. The industry is not interested in decontaminating these boats, and they're not interested in creating a boat that can be drained and decontaminated. That's a problem.
It's obvious. I mean, they're selling these boats for $200,000-$300,000. They'd rather sell those than a canoe.
But you're not inferring that this is just a way. Not this fisherman, far bigger than Quagga.
Well, we're not so sure about that because we didn't have these problems with just fishing boats. And we've got them now with wake surf boats because of the volume of the water. Fishing boat bilges can be drained and dried. Fishing boat, well, everybody up north that I know, and I'm a fisherman, is pulling their plug when they get out of the water and they're draining the water out of their bait wells. And if they don't, and they get caught with water in their bait wells, they got a great big fine. That's a huge fine.
But I don't see anything going up the road. No.
Well,
Same. Further down.
you're talking about the wake boats? They can't,
And I have
they
a
can't.
question.
Yeah, I know the wake boats can't drain by pulling a plug. They can't drain by pulling a plug. It's not in the bilge. I mean, it's not in the bottom of the boat in the bilge. It's in the tanks. Yeah. So they can pump that as far down as they can. You still got all the piping in there that's connected to all the ballast bags or tanks. You've got water that has to stay in the pump. It has to stay primed. And then you've got residual water at the bottom of those things because there's no bottom plug to pull out of the 6 ballast bags that are in there. It's not possible to drain those boats. In the wintertime, they're telling these people to put 1 to 2 gallons in each ballast tank of antifreeze. They're also telling them that the only way to get that antifreeze out of there is to the first lake that they go into, they fill the tank and then they pump that out. So they're pumping antifreeze into the lakes, which is also against the law.
Yeah, I'm sure it's powerful.
Say that again.
I'm sure it's powerful.
It's still against the law. We looked it up. Yeah,
That's
right. Yeah, but I mean, it's an indication the industry knows what the problem is.
Yeah.
You would think that they come to the table and say, we think we got a way to fix this. But they can't because they've sold so many of these boats that don't comply, probably can't be retrofitted. The real solution here is to get a bunch of angry wakeboarders together and do a class action suit against the industry. That's our thought. Sooner or later, that's going to happen because they've lied to them and they've hidden all these problems.
You're the wakeboarder.
Yeah.
Did Salem Lakes or Silver Lake in recent years clean up zebra mussels? Because I remember there were abundance of them years ago and now there seem to be very few.
And they seem to come and go. They didn't do anything.
They didn't do anything.
They really can't do anything with these zebra mussels.
No, once they're there, they're there.
Once they're there, we've only had them on Camp Lake for about the last 8 to 10 years. And when we take the buoys out, for example, some buoys are really covered with them and with chains, and other buoys have very few on them. And I don't know why they're, more popular in one part of the lake. The big problem they had on Silver Lake a number of years ago was Eurasian milfoil, and it was a hybrid species that apparently had gotten to the point where and the DNR is worried about this all over Wisconsin. Because the chemical that's been used is 2,4-D to control it. That's the same thing that kills dandelions, but the milfoil has developed that they can handle it, a new breed of it. And so now the DNR is recommending other chemicals to be used. And Silver Lake uses chemicals, Hooker Lake uses chemicals, Camp Lake uses a both combination of chemicals and mechanical harvesting. There's pros and cons with both, chemicals kill the plant, but the sediment stays in the lake. Harvesting takes it out, but they say, fragmentation will flow around and it begins to grow, but it does that with propellers as well. And, but the bottom, disturbing the bottom, in the 50s, we had DDTs and PCBs and the DNR is happy that's in the sediment settled at the bottom of the lake. But when you re-elevate that, you're causing problems. And these other nutrients, we've had these algae blooms these last number of years, all like green and brown along the shoreline. And these nutrients help that to grow. So
I would say in addition, it's concerning, if you've ever been on Silver Lake on a good day, it's really busy with a lot of kayakers, water skiers, children, people tubing, jet skis. And if these boats can't see, if it's up so high that you can't see, have there been any accidents attributed to these?
Richard Phillips and Carol Phillips were on Wildcat where they live. They do the water chemistry analysis. They were in their canoe. They have a wakeboarder there, and he was approaching them and he clearly couldn't see them. And Carol finally stood up in the canoe with her paddle, waving her paddle back and forth. The driver didn't see it, but the surfer did, and the surfer dropped off. And when the bow came down, the driver looked at Richard and said, "Oh my God, I'm sorry, I couldn't see you." So we have practical experience on our board with that. It is a serious problem. Some of the new boats have at the cockpit, the steering wheel, and the controls further forward. But most of the boats that I've seen on the water in northern Wisconsin can't see over the bow.
I think the waves could also hurt. And then the damage to the shoreline that homeowners have to repair or lose their property, parts of their property. So
it's happening now in the north. We got involved in this because we could see what was going on in the south. I'm familiar with the North Lake study and Carol. I was on the board at Carol for a long time, so I know the people who were doing the study. And we didn't want that to creep into the Northern Highland with the 4,900 lakes that we have up there, and have the same problems. North Lake has 46 resident wake boats on 400 acres. On Plum Lake, which is 1,100 acres, we've got 5.
is there
That
any
was
sort
last
of
year. We'll have more
registry
this
where
year.
where these boat owners
Pardon me?
are? Is there any sort of a registry where where the boat owners are? Like, how do you get those numbers?
I got the numbers on North Lake from a resident. They actually did. They
actually in our chapter, we could get that
Yeah.
because we do. You're supposed to have a sticker.
Mhm.
And then you would come in here and you register your boat and you see what kind of boat it is, and we would know how many are in different lakes. I know there's 2 on Center Lake, and that's only a 120 acre
boats?
lake.
Wake boats?
These wakeboard boats, right, that take on the water and fill the ballast. And we do get quite a few complaints from the shoreland owners there. It is a deep lake, but it's a small lake.
Yeah.
Would you mind?
There be an exception. for like.
Well, yeah. Aquanuts in Twin Lakes. Now, Ronnie thought maybe that that, I mean, that presents a problem because they have a show that they use these wakeboard boats. So, you know, that's something complicated they're gonna have to handle. We don't have that, fortunately.
I would think you could do an exemption for. This is in free.
It's twice a week all summer. Yeah.
And do it in a particular area and have a signing that it's only for the show. You know,
Can
Some
you
of
put
the-
up that, the map of Silver Lake where you, indicated where these boats would be able to be if they
Sure.
were allowed?
Second.
And where's the beach is up there. So one thing that also concerns me, I've done summer camps, bike camps at Silver Lake Park for the last 6 years, and we always take our kids to the beach. They can stand out there, they can play, which is awesome. But if waves are coming in at that point into the beach, that could, and some of the kids, you know, we watch them very closely, but some of them are, you know, just right above the water. And I could imagine a wave coming and throwing them off of their feet.
I do have a video that I sent to the board with a note. And told comment, don't get back to me, but I'll get you a copy of it. And then it shows a young kid that's caught on the slide out in the water.
Mm,
Because the waves are coming in so big, he was stuck there.
oh,
Well, that's
Yeah.
the-
If you're interested in that particular issue, the Wapaka chain passed an ordinance. And I was in that meeting. Richard did the presentation that day. That room was with an overflow standing room only crowd. And they were all there to testify. And so many of the moms on that lake showed up to talk about having to pull their kids out of the water because they were being bashed by these big surf waves that came in. The Wapaka chain has lakes that are smaller than your lakes. But it's a big issue with kids. I see on Plum that the kayakers and the paddleboarders get off the lake when these guys are out.
well, I've struggled kayaking on Silver Lake when even the surfers or the jet skiers or wave
Yeah.
runners are out there because it'll tip my kayak
Yeah,
pretty significantly. So
yeah.
That's scary to me.
Do these boats cause any undertow?
Pardon me?
Do they cause any undertow, you know, under the water?
No, they're not that big. It's not the same as the ocean. Undertow and that kind of thing in the ocean is that takes an awful lot of energy.
Yeah.
Those waves are coming from a long distance and they're big. The beach was closed on at my place in South Florida. Almost the whole week I was there one year because of a storm that was offshore and northeast winds. But those waves are 6-footers and that are coming in. And
Talking about Silver Lake, and that is our premier lake. It's a premier lake in southeastern Wisconsin. And we've allowed boats to go on there free with that parking area that we have had all that trouble with. There's a tremendous amount of boats that are kept at different marinas there. And, you know, on the chain of lakes, you have to have a sticker that's quite expensive to be able to operate there. And so, I mean, there's carrying capacities on lakes. The DNR hasn't really specified exactly, but as you mentioned, you know, 50 acres for one high-speed ski boat is what they used to talk about. But here we've got an area that a couple of these boats and a couple of ski boats, and it's over capacity, you know, it's dangerous.
In that area. I have tea and I live in Silver Lake.
Secretary. of Civil Defense.
In that area, there's savings. Relatively safe. So like, we do have, I'm just trying to control out there. Against the law. And for counterclockwise. Pulling and kind of steer. If they go counterclockwise, they're not over the area. Be able to take them up.
Well, they're not technically pulling once they let go of the rope, right? So, I mean, can they get away? I don't know.
It's really in something that's that small, it's going to be very difficult for them to operate very long in a counterclockwise manner because those waves are going to be, even if they stay in the yellow, it's very hard for a wake surfer on Lake Geneva. The big problem they have on Geneva is that these guys are looking for the calm water. So they're close to shore. They're in the bays. They can't be out in the middle of Geneva because Geneva's way too rough to operate like this.
That's why we've seen.
Yeah. In northern Wisconsin and Saint Germain, they're operating in Lake Content, which is a little lake that's got a channel going to it from Big Saint. And that lake doesn't have any weeds in it anymore. That was the premier bluegill lake in central Vilas County, and it's pretty much shot now.
Little history on how that Silver Lake, the majority of it was in the town of Salem. Silver Lake was part of the town of Salem until 1928, and that's when they annexed out and became a village. But because the majority of the lake was in the town, they enforced the town's lake ordinances. And Silver Lake had their own police department and they had their own patrol. And then for a time, the town of Salem had its own water patrol, which covered Camp Lake, Center Lake, Booker Lake, and Silver Lake, and Lake Shangri-La, and what have you. And that was dispersed. And now I'm glad to see that you're contracting with the sheriff's department, as Camp and Center are. Haddock Lake also contracts with them, and so does Lily Lake. And the same gentleman that runs that for the sheriff's department used to run it for the town of Salem. And the last thing about this is that the water patrol, at the end of the year, you send in how much money you've spent on the sheriffs and the whole expense. And we've been getting back in the 70% neighborhood refund. So if we spent $10,000, we got $7,000 back. And so, because the state just can't handle it, but they'd rather pay. And that the village used to do that as well. And it was really a good program.
Yeah. Well, I would be in favor of supporting an ordinance on banning these boats. And I would also go a little further and I would be in favor of exploring that you have to have a sticker to be on the lake. And we could administer that, and a portion of the sale of those could go back if you have a lake district to help with, treating the lake for the patrol.
Excellent.
And I would let you work on that, Dennis, but I think we should look at that for all of our lakes.
That's it.
And, I know when I worked here, people would come in for a temporary, right? Or,
And that's how they would get revenue to maintain some of the boat, docks or the boat landings and what have you.
and I know that, I don't know how many boat slips are on Silver Lake, and I'm not sure what the rules are on if they want to expand the number that they have. I don't know. So I'm not
Again,
familiar.
it does regulate that, the amount of boats that you can put on those piers, and it looks to me like they might be
Exceeding.
pushing it.
Yeah. So if you want to take up that, I would certainly support you on that. And I think, we'd have to think through how the licensing, the stickers would work.
I'll be happy to do that.
Would those stickers be for only motorized boats, or would that also be
It
for
was originally, I think,
fishing
just
and
for
kayaks?
motorized or fishing boats. And
Okay.
yeah.
anything with a motor?
It wasn't
Yeah.
A
for,
Sea-Doo.
kayaks.
Okay, but a Sea-Doo or
No,
something like that.
I would think that
Personal water.
the Sea-Doos would have to have a sticker
Or a
that's
Sea-Doo,
motorized.
yeah.
So if you're not motorized, like
Then
your
don't.
kayak, because what are you in the water for? An hour or two,
Right.
maybe, and you can really only go first thing in the morning because otherwise it gets too busy and you can, so Dennis, if you'd like to work on that, and I don't, you could ask the rest of the board, but I would definitely be in support of exploring those two.
As a
items.
thought, we could check, but it was always my understanding that like, for example, you don't register a canoe because it's not motorized, but if you put a device on the canoe and then you put a motor on it,
They
You-
do have those, yes.
then you're
Kayaks
supposed
have
to register your
E,
canoe.
yes.
And so, I mean, we could look into what's appropriate, not appropriate, but on the surface, non-motorized versus motorized could be the trigger.
And send it out with our, something in our tax bills or I'll set a little note in there that, make it real flashy so people. I know it needs work because I have friends that have come here to register and then they need the title to their boat and a
Sure.
trailer and I guess it was pretty complicated, so
Yeah,
I'll look into it. And
okay.
Is this something that can be proposed for this year or would it be next year ultimately?
well, let's see how we can put something together, but it's be notifying the people.
Yeah,
And even if we had the water patrol, which we don't control, but Camp Lake could tell them, if you stop somebody to check their boat and they don't have a sticker, tell them, that you should have a sticker.
Mhm.
We're not gonna, write you up for that. but
unless
something
she
like
had
that.
stopped one once, but I think we could work on the ordinance quickly
So
and get that.
Something I should tell
I'm
you,
newer at lakes and I'll be the one facilitating this. How is this different than our launch stickers? Because we already sell those for boats. So would this be on top of having to
No,
purchase the launch?
That's what we're talking
That's
about.
what we're talking about. And then you keep that on your boat.
So we already have those.
Yeah, but people don't get them.
Okay, so basically it would be to remind them that they have to and maybe keep better track. Is that what we're kind of looking for?
And enforce it, it sounds like too.
And I think there would
Okay.
be a limit that we would give out, right? Because if there's only,
I know at our boat landing at the Fire Lane on Silver Lake, that sign that we have there,
Yeah.
it says a sticker is required.
But don't we have collection boxes almost at every boat landing we have?
Well, you mean to pay to get on?
Yeah,
we
We
do.
do at some and not at others, and that's a funny thing. The DNR put this nice landing in, for example, on Camp Lake, and that's free. But then we got money for the Camp Lake Park. And it was mandatory that we charge them for boats that are. They didn't want to give us some money unless we charged, but here they have one that's free. I was at a meeting a couple of years ago at their grant meeting. And they were asking if we charge at our boat landings, and I said, our lake district doesn't own any, it's up to the town at that time. And I said, but the DNR doesn't charge, why don't you ask these two fellas? And they were quite embarrassed, they were put on the spot, they got red, because they don't charge, and here, it was a qualification to get the money.
Yeah.
it looks to me like you've got some border lakes, and I should tell you a couple of things. The way you would do this ordinance is you would do the lakes totally within the town first. If you've got more than 60% of the shoreline of a border lake with another town, you can do that lake without involving the other town, but you have to have a public hearing for that. If you don't have more than 60%, you would have to do an identical ordinance with the other town, and it really has to be identical. And what we've done in northern Wisconsin, we just finished it with Boulder Junction. Boulder Junction has shared lakes with the town of Plum Lake, the town of Winchester, and the town of Manitowish Waters. We did an identical ordinance for all of those border lake towns at the same time. Boulder passed it. We had it. We took it to all of the other town boards. They passed it, and now we're in the 60-day waiting period. When you do this ordinance, you have to wait from the time you have to submit a condition report on each lake to the DNR, or one condition report that's got all of the lakes on it. And that goes over whether or not they're in northern Wisconsin. We have something called ASNRI, the area of special natural resource interest. You would put that kind of thing on the condition report. If it's a premier musky water or walleye water in northern Wisconsin, you put that on your condition report. It's something you're trying to protect. So you've got all of those varied things you put on the stuff that you're dealing with too. If you've got zebra mussel in a lake and you don't want it spread, you put that on there. That condition report goes into DNR with the ordinance for their review. They don't have authority to cancel it or to tell you that you can't do it, but they do have a review responsibility to make sure that it doesn't conflict with any other laws. And they'll send you back a letter. That letter might be perfunctory and 1 page, or it might be 8 pages of suggestions. And I think we figure that the suggestions are intended to kind of help build your file in case somebody would say, well, you didn't think of this or you didn't do that. So therefore, you know, we want you to rescind the ordinance. They're trying to be helpful. Once you get their letter back, or once you submit your letter by email and in writing, the 60-day clock runs. You can't authorize the ordinance until the end of that 60-day waiting period.
Mhm.
So you're counting and you
Right.
have another town meeting, you authorize the ordinance, you put up the signs. The signs have standardization requirements. The fonts have to be so high. This one complies for the town of Plum Lake. It's 3 feet by 3 feet. It's not a small sign. We get these done by the Department of Correction in Plum Lake. You have to put one of those on every landing.
We have quite a bit of the Fox River. How does that work? Do we have any jurisdiction over that in our limits?
Do you have problems on the Fox River?
Dennis,
I don't, we have problems with just speeding on the Fox River. We do have buoys, locations that we're supposed to put buoys out there. As far as making a wakeboard boat, I haven't, nobody's told me about that,
You know,
but I know we had.
I'm just wondering if we're gonna do it for our lakes,
We do
you know,
it
do
for
we
our section
look
of
at
the
the
Fox
river as
River.
well?
My guess is that there probably isn't a big enough expanse of deep water. These boats really can't operate in much less than 12 or 15 feet of water. When it gets shallow, they can't create the wave that they need to create.
I
So
don't
they're
know how
looking
deep
for
the
deep water.
river is. Is it? I have no
Yeah.
idea. No
You can
idea.
touch the bottom like you can. Most of
Oh, you can.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna go on the river.
Silver Lake.
It sounds like, based on what you said, if we started this month, we wouldn't be able to get it enacted until July. And so our signs might be dated like August,
Mhm.
like that one. So we'd have a whole summer of these on the lake. So we should get started quickly if this is what we
You
decide
should
to
get
do.
started quickly, yeah.
Right.
And-
And I think that it would be good to involve, you know, our neighboring communities that we share lakes with.
That would be Bristol.
We'll assist you with the condition report. We're helping towns with that because we've been through so many of them. We've got templates that we can use. We're gonna need your knowledge, your local knowledge of these lakes, and we'll talk to you about that. One of my partners, Mary Jung from Two Sisters Lake in Oneida County, is really good at condition reports, and she'll probably work with me on this too.
Know that a copy of this ordinance has been passed to Ramsey, our attorney,
Mhm.
and their attorneys that would be more than happy to talk to him about it. And I know they're going to stress, don't change it much, because this is.
Right.
been proved.
Attorneys like to change things, and it's really important that we try to keep them as consistent as we can. 'Cause
Well,
then they can't,
maybe they speak with your attorneys and,
right?
you know, but I definitely think that I would be in favor of moving forward and putting this in motion.
Well, they were looking for a consensus, and I also agree.
So we'll just go down the line. How about, we're not voting, we're just giving your opinion on, would you-
At
yes.
this stage, it's a consensus to proceed with.
To make sure. we're-
because there's no action.
You don't
Right.
have-
You don't need to vote yet.
that's-
Yeah, so everybody can just state their opinion on whether they would like to move forward with exploring those options.
I think, this is a no-brainer. I mean, they're destructive as all heck. And we want to try and preserve what we have, so.
I agree.
I feel the same way.
Here,
Okay?
Yep.
All right, we're in unanimous consensus.
All right, very good.
So Dennis, I'll let you head that up. If you need another trustee to help seek out a helper.
Okay.
Because I have a feeling it's gonna be a lot of work with getting everything together and maybe talking to the other, but if you're willing to take it all on yourself, go right ahead.
In fact, John has offered to help fill out some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
We'll-
in the meantime.
We'll be there to make sure that everything goes straight. You just ask whatever questions you
Sure.
need to ask. We're here to help.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
tried to get this on our agenda a month ago, but it just didn't.
And
pan out.
the other thing. Yeah, the other thing that I'd like to say is, I don't know much about the lakes. That's Dennis. And I would like to explore putting together a once a year meeting with all of the different lakes
That's
boards.
absolutely excellent.
and have everyone in the room together. And we can have, all the different ones have their own and just have a roundtable discussion about what are you looking at? What are you looking at? What are your challenges? What's worked for you with this board and try to figure out, some.
We have 4 lake districts, we have the Bolts Lake District, that's the smallest one, it's only $19 million in assessed value. And their mill rate is $1.94. The second one I'll talk about is Hooker Lake, and that's worth about $138 million. And last year, their mill rate was 15 cents. This year, it's $3.04. They had a carryover, and the way the law is written, you have to take the money from one year and move it to the next. And that's the reason it went up and down like it did for them. They spend maybe $46,000. I think Silver Lake is spending 64,000 or in that neighborhood. And your mill rate is, they're worth $100 million. And their it's 54 cents is your mill rate. So you're spending about $54,000.
Yeah.
Lake is has an assessed area of over $450 million. Because their district was based on the watershed, which goes all the way up to here. And the tavern down the road here with the pond and all that runs to the Center Lake. And our budget varies from 100 or 230 to as high as 280 one year. But that's when what happens there is when you buy big pieces of equipment, you save up that money, it shows up in the budget, and then we get half of that back from the DNR. So
Yeah.
that's where that one.
Well, I
but
think,
that's 64 cents a thousand.
right, sorry.
That's it.
So I think that would be really beneficial. It'd be beneficial to have, have it on a Saturday and, everyone can talk about different grants and different, just all that kind of stuff. And then have, maybe some speakers come in to do a little bit of education because I think it would be good as a board too, and make that a yearly thing because you're not going to be sitting in this seat forever, Dennis. And I think that it would be beneficial to the village as a whole, to make that an annual meeting, and we would obviously do it over the winter when you're not so busy.
That's also.
So I would look to you to suggest a month to hold that in. We can start putting it together.
I'll put that together. Another thing is that in these districts, you have a village appointee. Ronnie's with the Silver Lake. I'm with Camden Center Lake and with Bolts Lake.
We don't,
And
we have a citizen for Hooker Lake,
citizen for.
but I don't hear from him ever.
No. And we have to report to the DNR at the end of the season. I have to with our harvesting report, what have you. And this would be really good to have it at the end of the season and have these districts get together. And the chemical companies are all good people that I've run into. The one that Bolts Lakes use, I like that outfit. One Camden Center uses is someone different. Silver Lake uses one that comes from up by Green Bay, Appleton, I believe, and it's Lake and Pond, but there's 2 lake and ponds. We use the one out of Belport, and you use the one out of someplace up north. So
Yeah, so for that, and I know that we're not this isn't on the agenda, but, um, Dennis, I would like you to work with somebody else on the board to put that together, because it'd be your job to get a hold of everybody, get some speakers in and work on what the, agenda would be for that. But I think that would be beneficial because, perhaps other lakes haven't thought about this or haven't heard about it. So
Without saying,
it's all-
you're referring to my alphabetical order when I started with Bolts Lake. Saying that guy won't be here
Well.
long.
So, I mean, that's, something that I think we should look at, and it would be, that
I'd
would be a good
happy to
thing,
do
so.
that.
But for this, I think we have the consensus, we're gonna go forward with exploring that and working on that.
Right.
Okay. All right, anything else from anyone? Then, I will make a motion to adjourn. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed?